Welcome to the Work Sucks, But I Like It podcast. So we've all felt it before, whether you're battling the alarm clock first thing when waking up before you head to work, or when you're staring at the clock waiting for it to be 5 p.m. to leave what feels like a prison cell you call your desk. It's this feeling of I don't want to work, that it's a waste of time, that it's not needed and you have better things to do, that the existence of our lives was really meant to be out in the world, doing the things we want to do and with all the freedom to do it, not chained to some desk with an employee number to identify you if you drown from the pile of work needed to get done. Hello, my name is Tony Tenaglier. Today, I want to explore more of this feeling and thought of I don't want to work, that feeling of work sucking and it taking up most of your day in life. We are going to try and understand those days that your paycheck doesn't entirely justify why you keep showing up. So let's try and understand potentially why it arises. Because if you're honest with yourself, on some days you have to admit that work is enjoyable, that there is a sort of rhythm to the day when you and your work feel connected, a sort of flow. And that is where we're going to start. And to do that, we're going to dive into psychologist Professor Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's paradox of work and a concept he called flow. In 2021, I wrote an article for the Thermal Processing magazine in the Quality Count section called The Paradox of Work and Happiness, that was based upon the work of psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow. What is flow? Think of the concept of flow like being on a long drive and time seems to pass by. Since I live in New Hampshire, it takes about 2 hours depending on traffic to get into the White Mountains for decent hikes up north. And for what feels like minutes, 2 hours have gone by as I park the car at the base of Mount Washington ready to hike up. Flow states are those times when you feel in control of what you're doing, and you're so locked in that sometimes extraordinary work gets done, even if it is just driving along and time seems to fly on by. You're in the zone, as some athletes call it. You're in a groove, as maybe musicians might refer to it. That the action of you driving your car and awareness to the road are so tuned in together. It's also found when doing that hard report you put together last week and finished on time where it felt you were just simply orchestrating all the pieces together. Flow in the psychology literature has been shown to lead to improved overall well-being, life satisfaction, and positive affect, or joy and enthusiasm. You can check out more on this in my book, Don't Let Life Pass You By, Win the Game of Work and Play, where I explore how you use flow to your advantage in your life. And to me, flow is an important concept to understand, because Mihaly, when he began his work on flow, wanted to answer the basic question of, when do you feel most happy? I think we all want an answer to this in our lives. And companies also love when you're in flow because it often results in more productivity. It makes them happy as well. Why? Because you're so focused on your work and not gossiping at the water cooler, you're flowing, which most likely means the work is flowing for the company. But flow isn't just implying that you're chained to your desk in the office to get work done. As we will see in later episodes, I will deep dive more into the stages of flow. But for now, hopefully this concept of flow, you're starting to realize maybe you have experienced flow in your life. Are any of you video gamers? Or played a game where you were so into it, as they say? That's a flow state. Video games have clear goals, which is part of this equation to achieve flow. Video games are fun. They keep you excited on what could happen next, all the while presenting challenges and the opportunities to grow your skills and develop your character. Now, growing up, I played a game called Diablo and would spend hours playing it. Typically, my dad would have to yell at my brother and I for getting off the game before bed because we would lose track of time. Another cool aspect of flow I want to explore one day from what I learned recently becoming a flow performance coach through the Flow Research Collective is that flow states create specific events in the brain. These flow states can actually get us addicted to the activities that bring about flow, and that will certainly be a topic for another podcast. But for this episode, let's hone into the definition of flow as defined in the psychology literature. It is comprised of elements such as loss of oneself in the activity they are doing, altered time perception, that is, how the long drive to the mountains felt like minutes as you were singing in the car the entire way up. There is also a sense of control, Like in video games, where you're in command of your character, taking on the forces of hell, for example, when I played Diablo. But most importantly, there is a distinct feature we are going to circle around throughout this podcast, this sense of intrinsic reward for doing something, the intrinsic reward of doing something for the sake of doing something and not just the outcome, a topic that seems quite overlooked today as we count our likes and how many comments we have on our social media, how big our paycheck is after the work we do each week. But now that we have this sense of what flow is and we have defined it, let's go back to why work sucks sometimes and this thought of I don't want to work. So the professor, or the godfather of flow, as some call him, Mihaly, he does this study by sampling people through what he calls the ESM, Experience Sampling Method, throughout their workday and personal lives. He was curious as to what people were doing and feeling throughout a given day. He wondered why, in some moments, people were happier than others. Remember, he was curious to when people were happy and what was governing that equation. This is what he discovered. Flow states are found readily in the workplace, but when participants in the study were asked where they would rather be, most immediately, without hesitation, indicated anywhere but the office. So why is that? Hence, the paradox of work. Work creates flow states. Even in the psychology literature, it has been shown to lead to happiness and life satisfaction. Seemingly all great things we would want in our lives, right? And yet, when employees are asked where they would rather be, or what they would rather be doing, they immediately indicate being the farthest they can from work. This is also a topic I'm studying now in my PhD program for industrial organizational psychology, where I want to better understand what motivates people to show up to work. And when they do, surprise themselves sometimes with the things they can achieve. So where does this leave us? First, let's just throw out this one scenario out there because maybe some of you are thinking this. Now, there could be the reason for people hating work because they don't like what they're doing. Definitely a possibility. I had a summer job during grad school one year to help pay for my rent. It was loading boxes into a FedEx truck at 3 a.m. in the morning. It totally sucked, but I needed the money. I needed the paycheck as the department over the summer couldn't pay me the full amount, and that meant I couldn't afford my rent. But as soon as I worked the 3 weeks or so and I made my paycheck, I quit. But I knew what I was signing up for. I just needed the money, not the job. So yes, a job can suck, and for those listening that resonate with the strong feeling of this is not the job for me, well, start getting your resume up on LinkedIn and networking to find another job. But before you do that, consider this. First, why did you sign up for the job you have now? Did you choose it because it sounded interesting? Did you choose it for the paycheck? Be honest, and don't worry, no one is going to know the right answer but you. Now, if you've spent some time there working, consider this follow-up question. Have there been days where you work that have been both good and bad? Also, be honest with yourself. The work I do, I find that people are afraid to be honest in the workplace. They will admit readily to how much they hate the work, but rarely admit that they enjoy it. So maybe you have had those moments of realizing that work isn't so bad. Maybe work has its ups and downs, just like life. So if your days aren't totally crappy, like being yelled at 3 a.m. to throw boxes into a truck, needing only 3 weeks to earn a paycheck, well, then stay tuned and let's carry on. Right now I'm reading Studs Terkel's book called Working. It's an awesome read so far. Basically, he goes around the country and interviews people that work to talk about what they value, feel, and think about the work they do. Some say it sucks. Others say it's enjoyable. But there's a passage at the beginning of his book that moved me. That a job isn't big enough for people, and that people are really looking for a calling in life. That is, it wasn't the boxes I was loading in the truck at FedEx that made me hate the job. It was a glimpse of a workplace culture that I don't value. It wasn't my calling. I can't speak for how they operate today. Then it was based upon how many boxes you loaded on your truck, and the supervisor yelling at their team to motivate you at 3 a.m. to load more boxes. I hated the work because I hated being yelled at 3 a.m. In fact, when looking back to my physical body of a picture of me around that time, I was in probably the strongest state of my life. It was fun, I have to admit, some days, trying to load the trucks. It was like a puzzle of taking the boxes and fitting them in. a skill I still use today when I get bits of information and I have to put them together to make a report. So each employee had a barcode scanner that was attached to their arm, and I imagine it was to allow for notification for people like yourself that the package had arrived or was being shipped to its next destination. Makes sense how you would get your up-to-date reports on where your package was. And despite me sweating more than most of the other people on my shift, I was always dead last when we would meet the next day to review the previous day's production numbers. I didn't get it. My employee number always showed up last in the number of boxes scanned and loaded. Every day, though, I would try and watch how others did it. They hardly seemed to be working more than me, so for the next few days I tried working harder, throwing boxes in faster to the truck. Now, just a word of caution. If you're shipping something, make sure it's packaged well, because someone is being yelled at 3 a.m. to be faster. Well, your box is going to likely be thrown into the truck. And one day I finally saw what was happening. While I was wiping the sweat away, I noticed the other employees were scanning the boxes at the conveyor lines and not necessarily the boxes that were actually going into the truck. It dawned on me that was how they were getting more numbers. They weren't loading more, they were just scanning more. This was nearly 15 years ago when I worked there, so I can't speak to how they are today. Hopefully things have changed. But at that time, the supervisor only kept track of the number of boxes you scanned, which is important, but what sucked was that if you didn't keep up, well, you were last on the next morning's report and you got yelled at to work harder. Let us now turn towards the workplace culture to capture some of the reasons why people don't want to work today. So let's dive right into a place that is flowing right along. People are the core of success when the work is flowing. I first want to start out by saying that over the years, I've introduced new technologies that might scare people into thinking that they would lose their jobs. But in fact, I'm convinced time and time again that with respect to the work that I do, jobs won't be lost in the industry I work in. The technology changes, yes. That is a must for organizations to stay competitive. I can't speak, though, for FedEx, as maybe a robot will replace the employee for manually loading trucks in the future. But over the years, 15 years or so I've been in manufacturing, I've realized that what sucks more for a company is to lose good employees. People are the core of a company's success. If you don't think so, tell everyone who works there now to not show up for the next month. See how much gets done. Nothing gets done is the answer, yet sometimes I think organizations forget this. So, organizations that don't care about their employees and fail to call them by their first names instead of just referring to them with their employee numbers are doomed to fail. Yeah, there can be fancy equipment and programs and robots doing cool stuff, making things more efficient, but it's the people that make the process flow and makes everything run. The human resource team hires the right candidates for each role. Maintenance fixes and maintains the equipment. Operators actually run the equipment. Management steers the sales and production demands. So when the process is flowing, you can imagine that the individuals on the team are also flowing in their work and overall contributions. Picture your favorite sports team winning, playing their best, day in and day out. The quarterback throwing the perfect pass to the wide receiver running, the hockey goalie saving a shot by seeing the puck as if in slow motion to defend it away from the net, the golfer envisioning the golf ball going into a hole on a long par 3. Notice, though, there were no robots in those examples. But good work was being done. And I think this is where it gets a little blurred. Robots are replacing work we do. There are no longer switchboard operators to direct your phone calls. There aren't any more jobs that require candles being lit in the city streets. Technology has replaced these roles. But it doesn't necessarily mean it replaces a human being. It means the concept of what needs work and why we do the work has shifted. Paradox of work versus leisure. What is flow? So let's circle back to the work of Mihaly and apply it today to your work scenario. Imagine your boss comes to you today and says, "Where would you rather be right now?" A lot of things might come to mind. You might need some more hours to get enough money to afford that upcoming vacation or pay off a credit card. It might make you think about the house project list that is piling up and you want to get home to cut the grass. Maybe you think about the puzzle you're working on or the good book you're reading and want to finish up. Today, the expectation of work and play is like in the movie The Matrix. You either take the red or blue pill for whichever reality you want in your world. Work or be on vacation. And we think that by taking a certain pill, we will be happier with our choice. But imagine now being asked during your day slightly different questions at random times of you doing things work-related, house-related, family-related, hobbies, and so on. This is exactly what Mihaly did in his ESM of sampling people throughout a given day. He wanted to understand when people were finding happiness and joy throughout their day. This method was ingenious to use, as the irregularity of the sampling would catch people doing different things at work, things at home, maybe they were in the middle of projects, start or end of a long day, maybe they were talking with friends, walking their dog, eating a meal, maybe it was during a meeting, or after the machine was fixed and parts were running back through the process. And what he found after compiling the results was that people would be in flow states at work, but when asked where they would rather be, not at work. This contradiction of the results, or paradox of work, Mihaly claimed to be a result of psychic entropy. Essentially, the company goals are not necessarily aligned with the goals of the individual. In order to understand this, we need to first understand more about Mihaly's work. This concept he called flow. So earlier on, we talked about some aspects that kind of define flow, right? This time dilation, sense of control, action and awareness merging into one. And in essence, they are optimal experiences and can yield extraordinary results under a certain set of conditions, which, believe it or not, work provides more of than your leisure type activities. Think of the reports or project you've worked on recently. You've been so engrossed and have had such satisfaction with completing, even if you don't want to admit it. You were likely in a flow state, and how you got there is comprised of three things. Flow has what we call three antecedents, things that need to happen in order for us to get into a flow state. The first is clear goals. Second, immediate feedback. Third, the challenge-skills ratio balanced. Now, before you start spiraling your mind into thinking about flow outside of work, there could be an argument made that in a 2-day weekend, there is a clear goal of having a six-pack to drink in a finite amount of time. Immediate feedback of the beer actually going into your mouth by the end of it, and your ability and skill to hold the beer steadily while intoxicated being constantly challenged. But that flow state isn't the same neurochemically as the more natural flow states you get at work. Plus, I'm not sure what is worse sometimes, the hangover the next day or the fact you feel you're doing the same shit day in and day out. In essence, though, work provides clear goals, especially in manufacturing. Goals like produce X amount of parts in a shift, or have Y amount of quality defects, hopefully none. There is immediate feedback from your boss as to your current performance of working on the right thing, and even feedback on the parts and the equipment manufacturing them when you go to measure them in terms of meeting or not meeting requirements. Even audits can indicate how successful you are doing what you are saying and saying what you are doing. There's plenty of challenges at work. The project you're working on may be a difficult one that your boss assigned. Maybe there's the challenge of managing and handling people. Maybe there is the challenge of trying to meet a particular goal in a certain deadline. But this is where your skills come in. Your skills as a manager and how to manage people. Your skills as an engineer to handle a report. Your skills as a computer technician to fix computers. In order to be in flow, this ratio of challenge to skills must be balanced, because if it isn't, work can suck. In fact, it can really suck when there are no clear goals, no feedback, and what you're doing is too hard or you don't have the skills quite yet to perform the task at hand. Imagine your boss not telling you what to work on, but yelling at you later on why you didn't get done what you needed to. Think back to my experience at FedEx. I got yelled at, but my feedback wasn't sufficient enough to make any changes, so I couldn't improve my numbers. There were no clear goals to really achieve. Maybe the goal was too ridiculous. I should have been scanning the boxes on the conveyor instead of the ones being actually loaded on the truck. I've had bosses like that over the years, creating too lofty a goal that wasn't realistic, and you don't want to work after that. Imagine, though, the times that you've done work throughout your day and you've gotten no feedback. Companies today focus so much on what is done wrong, we don't always give feedback on what is done right. Sometimes it seems that no one cares. I wouldn't blame you for not wanting to be there. Imagine the task at hand maybe you're doing was too big of a challenge, that even though you could potentially do it one day, maybe your skills need to further develop, like be given a chance at more training. When one or all of these antecedents, clear goals, immediate feedback, challenge to skills ratio balanced, are not in place for you at work, or the situation cannot be created, you won't find flow. And when you don't find flow, well, you're more likely to say that you don't want to be at work. Redefining work and play. Most companies have goals. I would hope so. We all need things to aim our lives towards. Imagine blindfolding an archer and telling them to take the arrow and with the bow hit a particular target in the distance. You'd better stand back. Sports are actually great analogies to understanding concepts of goals and what is required to attain them. Now, I grew up playing lots of sports: skiing, soccer, competitive golf, rock climbing, and so on. So when I think of companies that I've worked for, I think of teams like the Red Sox and the New York Yankees, the Buffalo Bills, and New England Patriots. And even though I'm from New England, with a bias towards some of these teams, I think corporations are similar. Company X has a culture like the New York Yankees, while Company Y has a culture like the Boston Red Sox. Employees are like industrial athletes going to work to perform and play on the big automotive or aerospace stage, or whichever industry you dress up each day to play. And just like sports teams have different, what we will call, cultures, so too do the corporations of today. However, before you pack your bags wanting to go from New York to Boston or Boston to New York, let's look at work and play. And so, let's go back to the article I mentioned that I wrote in 2021 for the aerospace heat treat industry. I tried to explore the concept that work and play are often viewed as opposites, but they don't have to be. Athletes work to run the soccer ball up the field to score the goal. Employees work to get the product through the process to hit the delivery goal. A company's culture should aim to blur the lines between work and play, where challenges and skill building are seen as rewarding, not mundane. The Yankees and Red Sox baseball teams both want to win. So do organizations that you work for. Employees and players should be rewarded based not just on KPIs, their goals, key process indicators, or sales goals, but personal achievements in each employee. Look at the MVP awards in sports. Does your organization even recognize when good things are done? Or is it just being brushed off and assumed, and it's back to bashing the negatives? In the aerospace industry, one of my greatest joys is when the team is successful at something. Maybe the employee did a comparison method SAT perfectly for the first time. Maybe the company is celebrating passing an AS9100 audit. Maybe an operator just got promoted, passed their exams to be a Level 2 NDT inspector. Maybe the operator finally machined a part perfectly for the first time. So employees show up, just like athletes do for game time. So I grew curious over the years as to what was really causing this paradox of work, as Mihaly called it. He talked about his psychic entropy, but I wanted to explore this further. Because from my experiences and the people I work with, they seemed to be enjoying what they were doing. So why is there a difference between the response of employees saying they would rather not be at work, probably wanting instead to drink a beer at a baseball game, while athletes say being on the playing field is the only place in the world they would want to be right now? In my book, Don't Let Life Pass You By, Win the Game of Work and Play, it's about empowering people at work to realize they don't have to wait to play until retirement. We can't be spectators to life, as the great baseball legend Jackie Robinson once reminded us. We have to get in the game. Life is about participation. Plus, all this waiting around to retirement and the weekends or vacations. And for what? What are we waiting for? What are you waiting for? This is the type of flow where life passes you by. So in the book, aim to transform the thoughts of, I can't wait until the shift is over, I can't wait until the week is over and the weekend comes. I can't wait until vacation. I can't wait until retirement. 2, more importantly, I can't wait to participate in life and find flow states. Life is not a spectator sport. It's about participation. I can't wait to get into it. This is the type of flow where we're engaged. It's a sort of game of turning work into play. And to do that, employees must understand how the team or organization engages in flow. Aligning company goals with personal fulfillment, the Waterman et al. Paper. This concept of flow is of growing importance today, believe it or not. When I finished up my performance coaching program with the Flow Research Collective, it was apparent that worldwide, employees and employers today are capitalizing more and more on engineering flow into their work, but also into their daily lives to get the most from life. But in my academic studies, I came across this really interesting paper where Waterman et al. In 2023 published their findings on replicating this paradox of work from the original work of Mihaly, but making the claim that it is due to lack of proper intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation. Let's stop and think about that. First, from the perspective of the athlete. The athlete wants to hit the baseball every time they step up to the plate. They want to be the best at swinging the baseball bat and hitting home runs. They have this internal desire to be great at catching and throwing the baseball. They want to be the best number 9 who has ever played the game. Now, the industrial athlete, or what we label as the employee, with their employee number, on the outside, they want a paycheck. The extrinsic motivation of wanting this money to pay for things they enjoy. But if you dig deeper, you might find that some employees want to be the best father or mother of their kids. They want to be the best engineer. They want to really develop their talents and skills, a chance to show off in a good way. There's an intrinsic desire in each and every employee that shows up to work, including yourself. And this is where most companies fall flat on their face and why work might suck for you. Employers fail to understand how truly recognizing intrinsic motivation fits into their organization. Imagine the baseball team hires a new athlete. The resume is all highlighted with fast short distance sprints and accurate throwing ability, great batting averages, so on and so forth. The team is all excited. And for some time, the athlete is performing. And then it starts to turn into an okay job, and you're not sure what is happening as the enthusiasm is fading. They were excited once, but now they're not showing up anymore as they once did. It seems the novelty is worn out. Now, some coaches might come in and start yelling at them, thinking that this is how you motivate others. Other coaches might even make them work longer practices, thinking you really need to get it out of them. But one coach will actually sit with this player and understand what is going on. Maybe they realize this athlete has something personal in their lives that could be affecting work. Maybe they need a break and feel exhausted from too much pressure of having to perform each and every day. Maybe they don't have the resources to perform their job. Maybe they feel overwhelmed as the owner wants the team to win every game, but this athlete feels it's too much to put on the team with the current state they're in. Can you see some potential crossovers here? Imagine someone gets hired into your organization to perform some work needed for a particular product or service. The resume is all highlighted with degrees and past experiences that match what the organization needs to be competitive and winning again in the market. But over time, this employee starts to drift from their production they started with. The honeymoon phase is over, as they say. One manager might yell at this employee and intimidate them to perform better. This likely causes, though, the employee to say, "This work sucks." One supervisor might blame the employee for all the problems and not work as a team. This employee might say, "Work sucks." The employee might even come to the conclusion themselves that work sucks when looking outside the window when it's a nice day out and they would rather play baseball. As you can see, intrinsic motivation is hard to sort out. There's no one answer. Organizations prefer things that are easily measurable, like external things, like paychecks and time off and so on and so forth. No one can see into people's minds, so why would employers want to measure it? The proof should be in the numbers of what is produced. This is why work sucks. Waterman et al. In their paper demonstrate that organizations that fail to recognize intrinsic motivation being critical to people showing up will fail. Work as an infinite game. So how do you get people intrinsically motivated to go from not wanting to work to being more engaged in making work for them? First, we must understand the game we are actually playing. In baseball and football and soccer, it's clear. Some have innings or halves, they're timed. Players try and score some goals and put some points on the board. When the time is up, you either win or lose. With the industrial athlete, though, it's more like do some reports, go to some meetings, put some money into your 401k, and pray the market doesn't crash so you can retire in 40 years. Instead, the game is this. Simon Sinek, in his book, The Infinite Game, encourages the thought that work and even life are not finite games, like soccer and baseball. To me, another way to say the same thing is how do you promote intrinsic motivation in the game you're playing? What do I mean? With something finite, we know it will end. We know there are hard starts and stops. With something infinite, there takes another skill to build in the employees of today. That is to build for turning I don't want to work to I can't wait to work. Now, word of caution, this isn't about putting your head in the sand and everything is all beautiful roses. It isn't to say that you love your job and you never have to work another day in your life. It's very precise in what the intention is. It's about a certain realization of how you integrate flow states in your workday and how you and the company you work with can create this team to play the game we call work, to intrinsically motivate each and every employee. And that's a lot of work. And I think that's why organizations don't want to do it, because they don't want to do that work. They just want to sit and look at the external thing of how many parts did you make, how many things did you produce? Because that's an easier number to stare at than the 500 employees you have to consider who have different personalities. So what I want to leave you with for this episode is that simply work doesn't have to suck. It can be meaningful and even fun at times. But the trick in this, and part of the trick, is you have to find the right team to play with. No doubt about it. If you're a Boston Red Sox fan, you're never going to want to play with the New York Yankees. If you're a New York Yankees fan, you're never going to want to play with the Boston Red Sox. Intrinsic motivation is going to help you win this game. It's going to help in resolving the paradox of work for you if you find yourself answering the question where you would rather be anywhere but work. So remember, success is not good luck, it's good skills. So if you want to learn more about some of these topics we talked about today, please check out my book, Don't Let Life Pass You By, Win the Game of Work and Play. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard today, like and subscribe to stay up to date with the ongoing conversation of work not having to suck all the time. I want to thank my band, the No Work Kids, for the music in the show, and we'll see you next time.